Hi everybody, FIDE Master Dennis Monokroussos here, and this is going to be a bit of a miscellany. It's going to deal with openings, but not anything with the Ruy Lopez. So the quick Ruy Lopez series is on hold for the moment. It will resume, fear not, but I need a break from it every once in a while, just as I'm sure you guys do too. So I'm going to show 2 or 3 very interesting opening ideas that I've just come across recently. Well, one is of my own manufacture, and this was from some time ago. The other 2 are from external sources, although this first one is something where I just heard the idea and decided to go with it a little bit and see what I can make of it. So this first one I got from the commentary coverage of the Reykjavik Open, and Simon Williams said that one of the players there had mentioned an interesting line against the Blumenfeld Gambit. So this is the Blumenfeld, okay, not yet, but this move. So it looks kind of like a Benko, but it really isn't. Black doesn't fianchetto, but instead goes for a big center in some of the main lines. And apparently it's never been played. Well, this has been played, and now when white goes this route, he generally takes on b5. The other main move, which is what Williams played in his actual game, is bishop to g5. So this is kind of a normal thing to do here. But after d, e, f, e, some Icelandic player had suggested to Williams the move knight c3, which is really a pretty strange looking move, but one that is in fact quite interesting. And he didn't say anything more about this, no doubt because he wanted to, in part because he wanted to keep the player's idea secret. But of course this was intriguing to me, and I decided I would take a look for myself and see what I could find. So the obvious testing move here is b4. Maybe b takes c4 can be played as well, and okay, so if e4, there is d5. So I mean, black can just grab this guy and hold on to it for dear life. And maybe white should do something else. Perhaps queen to a4 could be played. Maybe that would be the move here to prevent it. And if bishop to a6, then you could play e4, and d5 will be unavailable. So that's probably, or at least that's possibly what was had in mind there. Anyway, I'm just going to look at b4. So knight to b5, without which this whole thing is silly, but, well, what's going on with the knight? I mean, right now, white threatens to jump into d6, and if queen to b6, then bishop to f4 ensures that the knight goes someplace good, either d6 or c7. So a6, for instance, okay, here, queen e7, and white maintains, well, you can't keep control over d6 forever, but the price for black of reducing that control is giving up the bishop pair, and white has some chances for an edge here. So clearly the principled move at this point is d6, which not only stops white from playing knight to d6, but threatens simply to win the knight outright. So here, well, what's the big idea? At this point, there are at least 3 moves that are kind of interesting, although I think really only 2 of them are ultimately going to hold up. So the one that I think is less interesting, well, actually that's not true. I think 3 moves are playable here. The least interesting one, in my view, is e4. And the basic idea of this is that if a6, white can take on d6 and then fork the 2 minor pieces, regaining the piece. But I think this is just equal. So even quote-unquote falling for it by black doesn't really lead to anything. But it is a trick, because if knight takes e4, perhaps white does obtain some small advantage here with bishop to d3. Okay, let's say knight f6, and then a3, which takes advantage of a little a-file magic here to save the knight. And we'll see this kind of idea later on as well. So after a3 or a6, a takes b4, bishop b7. Now the knight does go back, and although black can grab the extra pawn for a moment, well, maybe more than a moment, his light squared problems are fairly serious, and of course white can take on b4 shortly. So I like white here. I think white's a bit better. Black can also get there by this move order, same thing. Alright, so knight e4 is no big deal. I think white should be a little bit happy there. a6 is about equal, although it's at least an interesting ending. But probably the most challenging move is knight to c6 to stop e5. Well, white could try it anyway, but it doesn't seem to work out. So takes, and ultimately black clogs up the d-file here with this knight, and white's just down material. I mean, he can go for the rook in the corner, but sooner or later it's bound to be lost, and black's initiative on the queen side is pretty nice. So I think black is better here. Another try is bishop to e3, but this will just transpose to what we just saw. Whoops. So finally, there's the immediate a3. So a6, takes, knight c3, and then just regular development by both sides. And black seems to be fine here. I mean, I don't know if... Well, I would say it's equal, but I suspect if white isn't careful, he could end up being worse. Although e5, I think, is going to be a decent counter shot by white. So, yeah, this position seems to me kind of strategically rich and a little bit unclear. Okay, so that's e4. The next line, probably the safest line, is a3. So a6, ab, bishop to b7, knight a3 takes, and now white can either regain the pawn like this, but black is developing pretty naturally, and he's okay. So black's pieces are on pretty good squares. The one drawback of black's position is the 3-pawn islands. These can always become a target down the road, but for the moment at least, black seems to be okay, and he's certainly ahead in development. White could also play knight to c2, and black should just gambit this pawn. If white wants to take it, then here, for instance, d5, well, actually d5 just regains it because of the threat to take on c4, but whether black chooses to take or not, I don't know, but his pieces are very active. So it might be more sensible for white to just finish his development. And then here, white could try bishop to h3 or bishop to g2. He could try taking as well, but again, black is whipping up pretty decent play here and has compensation for the pawn. All right, so that is what can happen on a3. And then finally, the most interesting move, although I don't think it ultimately gives white anything, is bishop to f4. Well, black pretty much has to play e5 here. And now there are two not very good but slightly plausible tries for white, and then what I take to be the best move. Okay, queen a4 I don't think is very good. Black just plays bishop to d7, and then a6 is coming if white doesn't do anything special. So we should take. And now g4. So this looks kind of confusing. I mean, the idea is just to play g5. Also bishop to g2. But black can hold everything together. So queen to b6. Okay, takes. And now not knight f takes d7. So here, white is in fact in okay shape. It's rook and pawn for two knights. But it's just kind of murky. But that's better than white deserves. So simply knight b takes d7. g5, queen to b7. Stopping bishop g2. And protecting the rook, of course, to threaten to take on b5. So check. And then here, rook d8. And now black is clearly better. He could take the pawn, or he could just play g6. White has just two pawns for the piece, only one if we get rid of the f6 pawn. And while the bishop on g2 is very good, it's certainly not compensation for a piece. Now, what he can maybe play is rook to d1 and bishop c6 or bishop h3 and try to keep black bottled up in the center, but he's too slow. I mean, black will play king f7 next, and white's in trouble. Okay, second try is bishop takes e5, but this I don't think works out so well, as after a6, white can grab the rook in the corner, yes, but it may end up being three pieces for a rook and a couple of pawns. So, not entirely clear, but it seems to be in black's favor. So the main line would be knight takes e5. Alright, so now black can choose between a6 and d takes e5. If a6, then queen a4, d takes e5, knight d6 check, and bishop takes e5. And white certainly has some compensation, but I think with accurate play, and only with accurate play, black can gain some advantage. So queen to d7, queen c2, knight c6, knight to d4, and it looks to me as if black is slowly unraveling. So here, for instance, black threatens to take on g3 and take on d6. So this forces some exchanges. And white has two pawns for the piece. The black king is in the center, but it's not very easy for white to really get at him. So black should be better here. I don't know how much, but certainly black ought to be for choice. So that was a6 in this position after knight takes e5. But black can also just take. And here again, white has some compensation to be sure. but black is just in time to really keep things under control. And white's compensation shouldn't really be enough. And yeah, so I would just leave off here. And again, I think black is a little bit better. So white has some compensation, but maybe not full compensation for the piece. Okay, so anyway, it's a very, very interesting idea. Of course, white didn't have to make this piece sack. He could go for a3 or e4, both of which seem to me to result in equality. All right, so let's move on to the next example. Okay, let's see. There we go. So this I saw from a column on The Week in Chess. So this was in a Malcolm Payne article, or Malcolm Payne, sorry. I forget which way he pronounces his name. P-E-I-N. Anyway, whichever way he pronounces it, he has a little article there on the effect of the FIDE candidates being in London, the effect that that'll have on the London Chess Classic in December. Well, at the end of that column, he presents this insane game. I hadn't heard of these players. They're a couple of young Ukrainians. Maybe they'll turn into great players someday. Maybe one of them's already well on his way, at least one of them. But this opening is just amazing, and it's really a wild game. So he has some very light notes. I've looked at the game more deeply, and here it goes. So I'll flip the board. I know some of you like the board being flipped. I'm not sure if everyone does, but it was black who won the game, and black is the one who came up with this ridiculous novelty. So I will present it from black's point of view. So c4, a6. So, it's funny. One of the main lines against the St. George is to play a quick c4, like e4, a6. Sometimes white plays a quick c4 there to try to impede this, but black just says, never mind, I'm going to play like this anyway. All right, so white plays knight to c3, preventing b5, and so black, of course, plays b5. Just a free pawn, and this is a novelty. So brand new position in chess, at least as far as the databases go. Well, what to say about this? It's like it's not really like a Benko Gambit because the structure is different, but it's of course sacrificing to open up the A and B lines, but also to gain some tempi with white's knight moving back and forth. Now, white doesn't have to accept this offer. He could play a3 to simply stop black from playing b4, or he could play d4, and if b takes e4, then e3 or e4 should be good, while if b4, the knight will just pop off someplace. But white grabbed the pawn, so the only way to accept the only way to refute a gambit is to accept it, they say, and that's what he tried. All right, well here black can play a number of moves, but he played e5, which takes d4 away from the knight, and just grabs central space. It's a good, healthy move. All right, knight f3, knight c6, and here white played queen to c2, which I'm not so sure about this move. I don't. This doesn't really seem to me. Well, this wouldn't be the most natural move to me. I'll put it that way. I suppose the main idea of this, or one main idea, is that it's prophylaxis against d5, since the knight would hang on c6, and prophylaxis against that knight's moving in general because of knight takes c7. But I don't know. This strikes me as maybe not really the way to go. So a natural move here that I think is also pretty good is d4, opening up the position. And really that's not that strange an idea, because white is ahead in development after all. So why not? So fight for the center, open up some lines, and try your luck in open battle. All right, if black plays bishop to a6, as he does in the game, then white can either keep the knight implanted on b5 with e4, or play knight c3. All right, let's take a look at each. So e4, here black might consider queen to b8, another idea we'll see in the game, another kind of Benko-ish idea, or play knight f6. And this gets really random. So knight takes e5, takes, and this is, again, a really odd position. And I don't know if white's better here. It's definitely quite unclear, especially from a practical standpoint, but maybe objectively too. All right, so knight to c3 may be a better move. And now I couldn't find any way for black to simply equalize. For instance, okay, e takes d4, something the computer likes at first, but this doesn't really get anywhere. So takes, and queen d5. And I don't know that black has quite enough. An interesting idea is to play knight e7, so that way the knight's ready to jump into d4 or b4. But again, I think white has resources. So knight to e3 is very good, and then on knight b4 you take on a6. If black recaptures on a6, which might be the way to go, maybe that's all that he can do, and maybe what he should do. But if he tries to go for the rook in the corner, it's usually a bad idea, and here too. So I mean, there are all kinds of complications, which are to some extent extraneous. I mean, unless black can play like a computer, he'll never even manage to keep his knight alive for this long. And even so, it's hard to believe it's going to survive. Further, even if, let's say, it survives forever, I mean, white's got the bishop pair and a pawn for the exchange. So I in fact think white's clearly better at this point. So, back to here. E takes d4 is not so fantastic. Bishop to d6 is a ridiculous looking move, but one that's showing up in more and more places and might in fact be okay. So after this, one possible continuation, just very briefly, is like that. White's still up a pawn. Black has a bit of compensation, but maybe not full compensation. So I would consider this position to be a little bit better for white. All right, so d4, I think this would be the move that I would recommend. All right, so queen to c2, bishop a6. Maybe e3 is worth considering, but white played e4. Queen to b8, piling up here. And now white played queen to c4, which just doesn't look healthy at all. You know, it's maybe nice to have that knight anchored on b5, but not at any cost. Okay, so some options. Of course, you can play knight c3, black takes, and has compensation for the material. a4 is possible. The queen sack is probably not very good with bishop b5, and then queen takes b5. Doesn't really look very reasonable. Or, well, okay, I mean, one line, let's have a little fun here. So bishop b5, queen b5. Yeah, the problem is that you can't play knight to b4 with the idea queen b1, rook a1, queen a1, knight c2, winning, because, obviously enough, rook takes a8 comes with check. Oops. And the reason why you want to play knight to b4 first, if you could, is that rook takes a1 is met by bc. So the sacrifice is just complete and utter nonsense. So this is poor. Well, oh, you know what? Well, let's see. Okay, give this a dubious and this a couple of question marks. But what if we flick in knight to b4 first? Aha. All right, so we'll be cooperative. So the point being, again, if queen to b1, then queen b5. And, well, now black just wins. A, b, rook a1, the queen's trapped, and here it's lost. So queen b1 gets all the question marks you can eat. But, you know, obviously you don't have to go there, so you could go to c4, for example. And then there's no queen b5. Well, no, sorry, you can't do that because of c6. And that also covers e5 against knight e5, threatening mate. So, okay, queen c4 is another stupid move. All right, let's try queen to b3. So, this time, the queen looks a little precarious there, but maybe it can survive. Okay, so let's see, queen b5 takes here. I think it is castle for white, and it looks as if black's little adventure is not at all likely to succeed. So bishop takes b5 is just not going to do it. I'm sure white's winning here, or very close. Okay, but instead we play knight to b4. Now, queen c3, c6, knight a3, takes, knight f6. Black does not mind queen takes e5, you just trade, knight e4, and a lot of activity. And also the a4 pawn is loose. So d3, bishop e7. Again, who cares about the e5 pawn? g3, d5. Knight takes e5, castles, bishop f4, c5. And this is just a mess. I mean, white's up 2 pawns, but his coordination is really strange. And black has ideas now like d4 followed by g5. Aiming to pick off the piece. Okay, it probably doesn't work here, maybe because of knight c6. But anyway, very, very messy position. All right, so back to the game though. White played queen to c4, and this is not the way to play chess. Knight f6, bishop to d3, holding on to the e4 pawn in case of some exchanging sequence. But this is also not very good. So he should have played a3. All right, well, this in fact just loses if black plays rook to a7. And Black is just bleeding, or white is just bleeding all over the place. I mean, knight to b4 is threatened, rook to b7 is, well, okay, rook to b7 is not quite threatened because the bishop on a6 is loose. But knight b4 is a big threat. But black decided to just be a hero here with knight to b4. And this is not fully correct. Rook to a7 was much better, but black is not worse here, and it makes for a spectacular game. So white said, okay, knight takes e7 check. Thank you very much. Life is good. Well, now queen takes e7. So great stuff here. Queen takes, knight takes d3 check. And all right, here king to e2 is a mistake, but white is not better after king to d1 either. Black can play knight f2 and grab the rook if he wants. He can go for perpetual, but there's no point in that. But he can also play bishop to e7 and not even bother taking the pawn on f2 just yet. Just sitting on this position. For instance, rook f1, and now, okay, we could play knight takes c1 or knight b2 or something to try to get the rook on f1, but again, who cares? Castles. We're just going to develop everything and then obliterate white. Knight e5. Hoping for knight e5, queen e5, bishop f1, queen takes e7. But again, that's not what this is all about. Rook f to c8. Knight to b4. Okay, so threatening the rook. d3, bishop takes d3, of course threatening the queen, queen a8, check, and black is clearly better, probably winning. Although materially white's still not too bad. He's got a rook and 2 pawns for the minor pieces, but the minor pieces are basically going to eat him alive here. So black is winning or very close. Now white could improve instead of rook to f1 with knight takes e5 though. So then check and grabs the rook, and black is better. He's got a rook and 2 pieces for a queen and 2 pawns, and his knight may very well survive the knight on h1. And white's behind in development, so black is better. I'm not sure how much, but certainly he's in the driver's seat. Well, in the game after king to e2, black is even more in the driver's seat, although he didn't play this quite perfectly. Although he played overall very, very well. Here, though, the most accurate move is not knight takes c1 check, as tempting as that is, picking up a bishop for free with tempo, but knight takes e4 is even better. And I'll just show you one very attractive line here. All right, let's say rook to g1, because the threat is knight d takes f2 check, and then knight takes rook. Okay, knight f4 check. All right, if the king goes to e3, then we'll see the first of many forks in the variations to come with knight to d5. So king to d1 instead. Now bishop to d6. Oh, new piece comes out. Check. And now bishop c5. Hitting the queen. Forking the rook and the knight, but bishop takes f2 is a pretty funny checkmating pattern. Alright, so that's a possible continuation. In the game, instead of knight takes e4, Stembuliak against Sarnowski played knight takes c1 check. King to d1, knight to d3, and then here white should have tried knight takes e5. And he's in big trouble, but there's one cute idea, which is this. White's move has knight to c6, which is a great move. Threatening queen to e5, mating. And if pawn takes knight, then queen c6 check and grabs the rook. So black's only good move here is bishop to e7. But now he's clearly better. So he just brings the king out of the way. He can finish castling by hand. And then, well, now he's threatening to play bishop takes d3. Anyway, very strange position. Black has a rook, bishop, and 2 knights for a queen and 2 pawns, although he may end up losing that knight in the corner. That looks like a fairly likely occurrence, although in the process, white may have to throw away a few pawns. At any rate, black is much better here, but probably not winning yet. In the game, Sarnowski played king to c2. And now knight takes f2, and black is winning. Queen e5 check, bishop e7, rook h to c1. Perhaps the most accurate move now is bishop to d3 check, driving the king up, but knight to d3 is okay as well. And it's not so he can win the rook. He clearly does not care about that. So queen d4, and now he castles. All right, so this is all about the initiative, and check out what happens. And it's really it's both amusing and attractive and powerful all at once. So king to d1. Well, what does black do now? Bang, knight takes e4. Of course, white can't take the knight because, once again, a fork picks up the queen. So he plays rook c3. Please, please, take my rook. Absolutely not. So black is resolutely uninterested in that rook. He plays bishop to f6. All right, again, queen takes e4, knight f2 check, so queen to e3. And now rook f to e8. All right, so now he will take the rook if given the chance next move, because that'll win the queen. Rook takes d3 is no good because bishop takes d3, and queen takes d3 is impossible because of knight f2 check. So we've got that problem once again. So here black threatens to take on b2, trapping this guy, also threatens knight c3, and again, if this, then this, wins the queen. So white played queen to b6. Okay, is the queen safe now from check tricks? Absolutely not. Rook a to b8. So now if he takes on a6, then we check this way, we check this way, and next move we take the queen. Poor guy. So Sarnowski played queen to a7, and this did keep his queen safe. The bad news, well actually in a way it doesn't, because here he really needed to play queen takes f2 if he wanted the game to continue, because the game went king to c2, and now rook takes b2 checkmate. So really a fantastic game by this guy, Stembuliak. I mean, a clever opening idea, really energetic and lively play. So just a very fresh, very, very attractive game that was played there. Okay, so let's go on to the third game, or the third bit of opening analysis. Well, no, actually, I think I'll keep that for another time. So I think these two games were both pretty fun, and had their own distinct charm. Or, well, it wasn't two games. It was one opening variation and then one game. So I think these were kind of neat. And like I said, I think I'll keep the other idea for another occasion. So sorry about that, but just gives you something else to look forward to. So next time I might get to that, but I'll probably get back to the Rui. And for those of you, so a couple of people, I think one in the comments section, and then I think someone emailed me through my blog, which I should mention. It's thechessmind.net, thechessmind.net, had noted that in this the old Archangelsk, instead of bishop c5 and bishop to e7 lines, there's also a very interesting system with bishop to d6 that has been played quite a bit and was recommended by, or at least discussed by Israeli, now I think American GM, Ronan Hartzvi in an ICC lecture, or a series of ICC lectures. So I'll cover that, and I also neglected to mention the rook to e1 variations for white in the Archangelsk, the old Archangelsk variations. So I think I'll cover that, and then I'll get to the Neo-Archangelsk after that, and then probably the Worrell and the Wormold variations, and then I think we'll finally be ready for the classical stuff, so the Marshall and the main lines with 9h3. So stay tuned for that. It'll take some time, but we're getting there. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed it. See you next time. Bye-bye.